And thanks to you at home for staying with us for the next hour. Particularly, I want to thank those of you who are back tonight after sitting with us through this last night. One of the things that happens in satellite interviews is that there's about a 1.5-second delay between me asking a question and you hearing it. So you can interpret that as sarcasm or interruption, but it's actually just the way the medium works. I'm sorry it's been so awkward for you.
No. Your interruption was not caused by the delay. That's just the speed of light, madam. It's much faster than that.
It has been distracting today to the whole staff, I would have to say. The amount of feedback we are still getting about that interview from last night's show. That was me attempting to interview the Republican congressional candidate from Oregon's 4th District, a gentleman named Art Robinson. I think most of the reason we are getting the feedback we're getting about this is because that clip that we just showed you was probably the sanest moment of the entire interview. And of course, even that part ended with me banging my head on the desk. But I think the other part of it has to do with the fact that Mr. Robinson is an unusual candidate. I think some of this got lost in the screaming and the shuffle last night. But in case you are wondering who this guy is, with whom I had an 18-minute trip down the rabbit hole, he's a man who runs something he calls the Oregon Institute of Science and Medicine. I say it is something he calls that because despite the rather lofty name, of the 8 people listed as faculty of this institute, 2 are dead and 2 are Mr. Robinson's sons. Plus, there's him. Also, the Oregon Institute of Science and Medicine has no classrooms and no student body. As part of his scientific work, Mr. Robinson claims that he has personally disproven global warming. He also says that his petition against global warming being true is itself proof. The signatures themselves on that petition are proof that global warming isn't real. When I raised that issue and described it as his belief last night, Mr. Robinson shouted at me and insisted that I describe his belief as a scientifically proven fact. You're well known for your belief that global warming is made up, that is not true. That's sort of the source of your national reputation, to the extent that you have one. Your opponent, Mr. DeFazio, is also trying...
That's a conclusion I reached as a physical scientist. You like it as a political issue.
Do you mind if I ask you a question about your beliefs?
It's a dead scientific issue, madam.
Do you mind if I ask you about your beliefs on this?
It's not a belief. It's a scientifically
right. Your scientifically proven fact that it's not true. Okay. If I say you proved it, will I be allowed to ask you a question? Aside from declaring that he has proven global warming to be false, Art Robinson also promotes an idea called hormesis. I tried to get at this last night, also did not go well. Basically, the idea of hormesis is that low-level doses of radiation are good for you. The American Spectator did an interview with Art Robinson about a decade ago that was in part an explanation of his hormesis idea. Quoting from the Spectator, "Low background levels of radiation seem to be good for you." Art Robinson ruefully points out the hormesis data show that Oregon is not a particularly good place to live. Its background radiation levels are below the national average. There's less cancer risk in Denver, where the background radiation levels are much higher. Okay, if he believes that radiation is good for you, I tried to ask Art Robinson last night whether that is connected to his past statements that the proper way to dispose of nuclear waste is to sprinkle it in the oceans and over America. Also, his position that there should be more nuclear weapons testing in America. Does he hold those positions because he thinks it would be a healthful idea to raise radiation levels in America or in Oregon because he thinks that that is good for us? I tried to ask him that. He really did not want to answer that. I realize that you're also an advocate for expanded nuclear weapons testing in the United States. Is that because you think it would be beneficial to up the background radiation levels in the United States because that radiation would be good for us? When the American Spectator wrote an article on you in 2001...
That's an outright lie. That is an outright lie.
I'm asking you a question.
You can't even find an out-of-context quote to support that one.
You can't find it out of context, except for all your quotes on the record about low-level radiation being good for us and you wanting to sprinkle nuclear waste over the country. Except for that. Mr. Robinson is on the record about a lot of this stuff because he publishes a newsletter called Access to Energy. It is essentially a contrarian, don't believe a word of what you hear, science-ish publication. In every edition of the newsletter, there is a section called Stark Raving Mad. His words, not mine. It is this newsletter where Art Robinson has propounded his theories that AIDS is a myth and a government plot. He wrote that back in 1995. Last night, he would not answer me about whether or not he still believes that to be true. He wouldn't even confirm that those were his words, even though they were written purportedly by him in his own newsletter. Now, that would be a heck of a conspiracy if someone were rewriting things secretly under Art Robinson's name. We'll never know. File it under Stark Raving Mad in the next edition. It is also Mr. Robinson's newsletter where he has propounded one of his other beliefs, that public schools should all be abolished. I don't know if he still thinks that AIDS is a myth and a government conspiracy, but abolishing public schools, he definitely still believes that.
Some guy, I don't know why, he says, "What do you think of the public schools?" And then I was dead. And my credibility was going to be gone. I looked at him, I said, "I think the public schools should be abolished."
Instead of public schools, Mr. Robinson promotes homeschooling. He says he has homeschooled all of his own kids, although he says he does not teach them. He lets them teach themselves as part of the homeschooling curriculum that he sells. Mr. Robinson has acquired the rights to and has reprinted the life's work of a child's adventure book author, a spectacularly racist British writer named G.A. Henty. Art Robinson recommends that you teach your kids based on the historic novels of G.A. Henty. May I please read you a passage from one of those? This is from a chapter titled The Negro Character. They are just like children. They are always either laughing or quarreling. They are good-natured and passionate, indolent, but will work hard for a time. Clever up to a certain point, densely stupid beyond. The intelligence of the average Negro is about equal to that of a European child of 10 years old. They are fluent talkers, but their ideas are borrowed. They are absolutely without originality, absolutely without inventive power. Living among white men, their imitative faculties enable them to attain a considerable amount of civilization. Left alone to their own devices, they retrograde into a state little above their native savagery. A meditation on the Negro character. That is what Art Robinson has kept in print for the homeschoolers, for you to teach to your kids, or rather, for your kids to teach themselves. Again, quoting from a pro-Art Robinson article in the American Spectator, the conservative magazine, back in 2001, Art has managed to convert the education of his children from a financial drain into a thriving business. Among them, the family members have developed a homeschool curriculum. With typical single-mindedness, Robinson tracked down all 99 historical novels by G.A. Henty, and they in turn were optically scanned. 3,000 Henty sets, 6 CDs, were shipped in the first year. They retail for $99. This is Art Robinson, okay? Now, here's the thing. There was a guy like Art Robinson, I'm guessing, in your town somewhere. Maybe on the outskirts of town. I mean, Americans are like this. There are a lot of unusual people in this country, and a lot of them who hold very extreme beliefs and who propound interesting theories. It is not even that weird for people like this to run for political office. It's one of the things that folks like this like to do, in my experience, actually. It is a little bit weird that Art Robinson won the Republican primary in Oregon's 4th District, but if we put that aside for a moment, what is really important about Art Robinson is not just how unusual he is as an American or as a candidate. What is important about Art Robinson is that he is potentially viable this year as a congressional candidate. Not because of anything about him and his life's work, but because of this.
Politicians Nancy Pelosi and Peter DeFazio made a mess of our economy. Their policies aren't working. It's time for change. Art Robinson is a research scientist, not a politician. His plan to improve our economy: stop reckless spending, lower taxes, promote private sector job growth. Art Robinson, a new voice, a smarter choice, the independent leader we need. Concerned Taxpayers of America is responsible for the content of this advertising.
Concerned Taxpayers of America. That group is running $150,000 worth of that ad in this rural district in Southern Oregon to make Art Robinson seem totally mainstream, totally electable. The $150,000 from Lord knows where. Concerned Taxpayers of America doesn't have to tell anybody where the money is from that is running that ad. The only thing we know about where the money is coming from to try to promote this man's candidacy, to try to make him not just the guy who lives in the self-declared scientific institute distributing racist children's books on the edge of town, but rather a viable congressional candidate, the only thing we know about Concerned Taxpayers of America is this. This piece of paper filed with the Federal Elections Commission, this is it. This is the sum total of concerned taxpayers of America's existence. In this filing, the Concerned Taxpayers of America helpfully notes nothing about their donors, nothing about where they intend to raise money from. They only note that they intend to, quote, raise funds in unlimited amounts, which they can, of course, spend in unlimited amounts. And so it is $150,000 in this race on behalf of Mr. Hormesis Sprinkle the Nuclear Waste the Negro character. $150,000. Is Art Robinson likely to win this race? No. But what if it were $500,000? What if it were $1 million? What if it were $150 million? What if somebody decided, for whatever reason, either because they hate Peter DeFazio that much, or because they're super into hormesis, or because they're somebody who thinks that Negroes really are childlike and they want someone in Congress who promotes that concept? What if that person decided they wanted to spend $1 billion to get Art Robinson elected to Congress? And they did that by funneling money into a group like Concerned Taxpayers of America. If that happened, there's nothing to stop it from happening. And you and I wouldn't get to know that that's who's behind those ads as we see them on the air. We called Concerned Taxpayers of America again today to find out who's behind their ads. They did not return our calls, nor do they have to, nor do we expect them to. Nor are we able to deduce from their filing with the FEC what might be their donors' motivation for supporting this candidate. Right now, as their ads are running in Oregon, we are not allowed to know who they are. We are not allowed to know who supports Art Robinson for Congress to the tune of tens of thousands of dollars in a small rural district. That's just how it works now. There's probably a direct relationship between the kookiness of any given candidate and the amount of money you need to make that candidate seem viable in a congressional election. As the kookiness of the candidate goes up, the amount of money you need to keep that candidate viable goes up too. The idea that a candidate is too kooky to be elected is only true in an environment in which there is not unlimited money to be spent to make that person seem less than kooky. But when the money is quite literally, and look at the FEC filing again, quite literally unlimited. Unlimited either by actual dollar ceilings or by the shame associated with being seen to donate that money. When the money is actually unlimited, there is no ceiling on how kooky a candidate can be and still seem electable. As long as the money can go to infinity, so can the kook factor. The chart goes on to infinity and beyond. This is the new reality of American politics.